Are there any questions? Then I just start. I think you said you made 50 RTIs of the lead tags from the museum?
For now we made 40 of them.
40, okay. And are you planning on making more? Or?
All of them, yes.
All of them? Okay.
There are 1,200 lead tags, obverse and reverse. And they have got also these huge collections of coins.
Okay.
So
the idea is to digitize them in the museum in Zagreb.
Yes.
These ones were digitized in Pisa. Were brought to Pisa and digitized there. But the expertise, programs and everything will be transferred to the museum and it will do on site.
Okay.
And the idea then is to publish all of them to make the data available to everybody.
That's very good. Yeah.
I want to ask about the, you skipped the view graph of Mommsen, that was your number 80. Could you express the relation between that Mommsen view graph and the... Yeah.
yes, that was this one.
And the next one, because I didn't find the relation between the two.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, it's just because, okay. It's just because those are, well, when it comes to the res gestae, you have to go in search of many reproduction of these inscriptions. Drawings, transcriptions, squeeze, photographs, photogrammetries. And they are related to each other, and there are also some steps in the story of the stones, depending on the archaeological discovery and the degradation of the stones. And this was an organization of the kind of information that is available in the network of information. You've got also now a fourth testimony, but usually you say that you've got the Ankara one, the Apollonie and Ankara, Apollonie and Antioch. You've got several diplomatics through times. You've got several kind of reproductions, like I said, photographs, squeeze. And this was an example of the different kind of reproductions and diplomatic transcription that occurred throughout times for the first testimonies that is Ankara. And,
do you have that in digital? You see, it's nice to see that relation.
This one is a digital one, for instance.
Yeah, for instance, the Mommsen, it's put in a database. So can you use the Mommsen database with that scheme, for instance, and compare that with Scheid or other?
Oh, that would be one of my dreams, but while I'm working on other projects. But the Mommsen edition has got some interesting problem from the diplomatic point of view, because it's used some broken lead characters, do you say that? To show that some letters were not easy to read, and so there is a problem for the diplomatic transcription of Mommsen. But what I would maybe do would be something more close to work on the squeeze, on the pictures of the squeeze, on this for this testimony that Mommsen works with, in order to make a confrontation between the squeeze and maybe the photogrammetries that was made in there is 1997, but there is another one in 2005, I think, to see the archaeological difference. But to make a confrontation instead from the textual point of view, that is, for instance, the Scheid one and the Mommsen one, it's more a question of working on the critical text. So there are two different problems. It's a very confused inscriptions throughout time. There are so many variations, sometimes just on one character the sentence change. So it is a very complex representation from a digital point of view. I have not finished this work yet. It was an example to say how I came to ask to have a diplomatic reconstitution of how the epigraphers see the inscription related to a textual representation of this vision of the inscription. Did I answer? But the rest is just so complex, so you just face some part of the problems, one after the other one.
Okay, next one.
If you compare your work with, probably a mean question, if you compare your work with the work of this Angelos Bramputis from Florida, or with, let's say, Marie-Claire Beaulieu from
the Perseus project,
where would you locate yourself inside of the fleet of, at least it's not a fleet, but at least a three-ship group of trying to make progress in terms of, let's say, collaborativeness and visibility in ancient inscriptions?
Maybe it comes from my French background, so it's a kind of methodological aspect that I was totally unable to see the inscription as several parts separately. Like, let's see if we could make a 3D of it on one side, and let's see how we could take care of the text on the other side.
That means you have a view that holds it all more together, or?
I think it's a global message, an inscription. It's a message that is roots in its context, and a digital edition of this message has to show not all, but what we can represent from the relationships between those elements. If I take another example that is easy to understand, is the Sperlonga cave. I work on this, on the question of how to represent the epigraphic message from a digital point of view with a great person whose name is Marina Caputo. And she's a philologist, and she was focusing on the epigrams that is in Sperlonga cave. And I asked her, well, please, let's see what the entire context tells us and how the message is maybe different or more easy to understand, or, well, let's see what do we learn and how we could represent it. And we were very interested by the relationships between the epigrams and some even natural symbols like the sea or l'île de Circe. I'm sorry, I don't know how you say that in English. In addition to the iconographic program that there is inside the cave. And the message of the epigram is very interesting because most probably it was not even written for the cave, but it was brought to the cave, and somebody at one moment in the history of the cave and in the history of this epigram decided that there is a relationship and to build a complex message, bringing the inscription in this specific context. So, even if we cannot rebuild all the messages that an inscription carried through time, but we can be interested by at least the main message that just appears to us. We need to work on this complexity of the communication system of the old one that I called le dispositif épigraphique. When I worked for a panel with Bamputis, I know they bring a very strong technology that is very useful, but they've got also a computer scientist point of view. Yeah. And I found that it was also useful to discuss a little bit more from the historical point of view of the object. So this is where I will find myself in this workflow, because they are not excluding each other. It's just a question of methodology and how you can use the colors or the brush that the others have to produce something to work on.
I would agree with this. Can I have another question, because RTI is always a little bit sold, at least I have that feeling, to me, as the famous weapons of mass destruction case from Saddam Hussein. So RTI is the final solution, or the first time in human history where people thought about lighting of objects, which will be 20 years from now one of the more ridiculous parts in the history of how to lose intellectual concepts by digitizing, you know, because archaeology, which in general doesn't have this kind of focus on inscriptions, which is, you know, a flat surface with some letters which are easily to be made in 3D, and you can see easily the success also. But we have sculptures and objects of all kinds, surfaces, earthworks, so to say, trenches, and whatever you can think about, and what we were discussing about in archaeology. The question of lighting has been killed, has been it has been rooted out and destroyed by just destroying all the photographs positions in archaeological institutes like the DEI, or in university chairs where photographers don't find follow-ups. They will be replaced by data people or excavation technicians. And so this whole art, so to say, of what you touched the question, what is the right light, or is there a right light, or what was the basic choice of lighting objects that 200 years of, or let's say 120 years of research were being based upon. You know, this whole thing just went down the drain, because today the perception is by digitization, we don't need that stuff. You know, we don't need that. We just do it with the iPhone, and naturally we come up with pure shit in terms of sculptures, so to say. We can't do RTI really on big sculptures. It just doesn't really work. And so all the RTI wise guys and smart heads like Alan Rabinovitz, my friend, they always come up with gems, you know, and those stuff, you know, and they can prove the point of RTI, while we have a much bigger problem looming without any kind of answer. And I would think you will see the same if you work on RTI, that everything that's kind of democracy lighting, that everybody can make a choice of his own, which is a big thing, because I was doing photographic campaigns for some years in my life, and I know researchers in classical archaeology who were big researchers in Rome portraits, who said what the part of their lives they don't want to miss is being close to the objects with the lens of a photographer and being able to change the light, and they see so much more under that light. So it is clear RTI is bringing up again on small objects this fascination of possibility of choice, of choosing light, but it doesn't resolve the problem that we have with anything bigger or anything too big for RTI, and there's a lot of it which is too big. I think the majority of objects is too big for RTI, and so RTI is often sold specifically it makes sense, totally sense in epigraphy, but it fades out. Even not everywhere there, and it fades out then. So the question is also, but probably not for you to answer, that if we talk about digital lighting, we talk about the thing we lost. And for the long midterm perspective, we have to think about how we can regain that, how we can recoup that. And RTI is just one step, you know, probably the last stand of this lighting problem as a basis for critical science, you know.
Yep.
Just let me make a remark. I a little bit disagree with kind of having not the right functions in geoinformation. If you have a very high resolution scan, you can do that illumination in an artificial way, and you have it's just one argument, you see, but then you can have near reality illumination variations as you like it.
Yeah, but for sculptures that's totally uninteresting.
No. I just want to say, don't say I what people do are tourists that make people that are not professionals. There is a lot of professionalism in this kind of full reality digitization, which can be very useful. Of course, you're right. There is always some level where you cannot do with certain techniques, but it's not just plain pictures that the experts of geoinformation take. That is what I want to say.
Yeah, that might be clear. The point is only that this is being sold now as we could reprint, Syria in 3D. That is the final stance of that line of argument, and we totally disagree with this, because this is really just let's say advertisement of new.
And you're just arguing against. It would be nice if you look yourself really into the details, what is possible, and then take the things that are positive for certain aspects, and not just make jokes about certain applications that come up this way. I also would disagree that you cannot build the Berlin Cathedral with the 3D printer. Then you have something to take home for your children or something. It's not professional. That's right. But there are applications, where it's very useful.
Yeah, but we in this discussion we just see that there is a long span of, let's say, requirements of properties that has gone lost between a true 3D model that involves, for example, all the architectural problems also and solutions to these problems of buildings, specifically in the roof area, which is just not there anymore, and there is no kind of satellite or any kind of other photography that brings that back. And so this is poor 3D, but we may not get stuck on that point. I just wanted to say that, as you said, what you tell for RTI is true for everything, for every object that we are talking about in, let's say, the archaeologies, not only in classical antiquity.
This is why I showed the other annotation tool.
So the rules and or the requirements and the happiness and everything about change of lighting and change of understanding of an object through change of lighting, it's all true, but it's all gone except of that category of object that fits into RTI, and that's a big problem for us.
If I might try to reconcile your two opinions, I think it's speaking something slightly different RTI, which is very close to a photograph, in sense of like measurement, more than a photograph. It's something which is very standardized, very automatic, there is no choice involved. So it has the advantage that gives you an accurate, reproducible result, but of course keeps out everything which is choice, decisions, enhancing and so on.
At least you have a standard set of choices later on as a user, more choices than you had before.
But on the other hand, when he was speaking about 3D models, reconstruction of lighting and color, from my experience in my lab where we do reconstruction of objects, lighting and so on, it requires a new kind of expertise which is very close to what was the expertise of the photograph until a few years ago. To get good results, to get realistic approximation and artistic representation of the object in textures and models requires a competence which is beyond that one of the mere computer scientists and goes more on the photograph level of. So I think that your two opinions are not completely opposed. Good result can be obtained, but it requires more or less the same competence that was required on the photograph level.
That's what I wanted to say. And from one point, we lost in archaeology. We lost this kind of competence. It's not there anymore. It was not a real archaeological competence, but it was some aesthetical, photographical competence that lived close together in symbiosis with archaeology. And funny enough, there were big photographers who at least touched it without having studied, but they had their kinds of aesthetical feelings, and there were decades in which the whole community was okay with a certain way of lighting of objects, which is also part of the development of aesthetics in time, you know.
Are there any other questions? Then I think it would be good to go to the informal discussion and have some wine. And thank you very much again.
Yes, thank you.